Hello and welcome back to part 4E of our Revealed Reality Bible Study series on the Gospel of Mark. And forgive me if I incorrectly announce the previous part or segment. They're correctly listed on my website, www.wtfo.biz. Now, we left off with talking about how people just didn't get Jesus was the Messiah, but the demons got it. But his own disciples who he worked with and trained and taught with every day, they just were not getting it. They saw his healings and all the stuff he was doing, but Jesus had to let them know that's only a part of what establishes me or will establish me as God's Messiah. The healings, the exorcisms, the raising from the dead, all those things, that's just a part, he says, of my Messiahship. Ultimately, I'm also called to die and be resurrected to fully establish my Messiahship. What is he talking about? Well, we know God's power was working through him, allowing him to fulfill his role as God's agent through the healings, the teachings, the exorcism. God showed God's power through him and those things, but he's suggesting now that I'm not going to be fully established as God's anointed one, God's Messiah, until I have been killed and brought back to life by the power of God. That's the ultimate sign of my Messiahship, or will be. Jesus reveals his ultimate purpose and mission as Son of God and what it means to be his disciples in these next chapters. His journey and our journey must ultimately lead to the cross. Listen to this. In chapter 9, Jesus comes upon a scene where his disciples are trying to cast out a demon or whatnot. They cannot do it. And so Jesus has to take over, and he does cast out the demon. And then afterwards, the disciples, they was feeling some kind of way about it. We want to do this, but we couldn't do it. But he talks about this in verse 31 of chapter 9. That after he leaves that region where he just performed yet another miracle, but he didn't want anybody to know that he was there, because he wanted to, verse 31 says, spend more time with his disciples and to teach them. He said to them, the Son of Man, talking about himself, is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies. He will be killed, but 3 days later, he will rise from the dead. Disciples are still not really getting it, because verse 32 said they didn't really understand what he was saying. However, they were too afraid to ask him what he meant. Let's skip down to chapter 10, verses 32 through 34, and they read in this way. They were now on the way to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. The disciples were filled with awe, and the people following behind were overwhelmed with fear. Taking the 12 disciples aside, Jesus once more began to describe everything that was about to happen. Verse 33, listen, Jesus told them, we're going up to Jerusalem where the Son of Man will be betrayed to the leading priests and the teachers of religious law. They will sentence him to die and hand him over to the Romans. They will mock him, spit on him, flog him with a whip, and kill him. But after 3 days, he will rise again. So Jesus is trying to show to them and explain to them what it means for him to be called the Son of Man and the Son of God and the Messiah. It means ultimately he's got to die. There were any number of healers and prophets round and about Jerusalem and some of these other territories that Jesus hung out and ministered in. So the fact that he could heal folk, that wasn't uncommon. They had other people that could heal folk. But Jesus is saying that's just a part of what makes me God's Messiah. That's just a part of the demonstration of God's power, his kingdom power. But the ultimate demonstration of God's kingdom power will be to bring me back to life. Now, all of this sounded crazy to them, sounded foreign. They weren't messing with it. But ultimately, we need to pause and give thought that the cost of discipleship is high. And just like Jesus had to sacrifice, so does now God through Jesus call upon us to sacrifice. We don't have to give our life in this way that Jesus did, but we have to give our life in the way that Jesus did. We have to spend our life doing the will of God and performing kingdom acts. We're going to leave it right there. And I want you to join me for part 5 of our study, and we'll conclude with part 5. We're going to take a look at Jesus' death, his burial, his resurrection, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that factors into discipleship that we have bought into and that we have claimed as a Christian. We will engage in kingdom ministry. Well, God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Hit the website, www.wtfo.biz. Not only are these studies there, but there's a lot of other positive information, inspirational stuff that can help you. So thank you for joining us. This is Reverend Art B signing off. I will see you next week for part 5 in our study of the Gospel of Mark. God bless and keep you real good until then.